Thank you so much. That was great. Prof. Huntley, you're welcome to switch on your camera and microphone now. I'm going to look at the questions that are in the chat already, but please feel free to raise your questions. You can raise your hand. There's a little panel at the bottom called reactions where you can get the raise your hand button. Otherwise, maybe just, well, let's just see how many questions there are first. I saw one question by Megan that asks about the difference between governance and management. This seems to be used interchangeably, and she's asking what is the difference. What would you say is the role of science, or what role can scientists play in contributing to good governance outcomes? So 2 questions there.
Well, should I respond to the first one first? And yes, there is a continuum between governance, science, and management. One tends to think that one can undertake science and good results will come out, or one can provide good management and have success. But no scientific work, no management leadership will succeed if it's not within the framework of good governance. Governance is what politics and society determine and structure. And where we have failed repeatedly across Africa is that we might have excellent science, we might have perfect managers, good scenario planners, but if it's not undertaken within the framework of a transparent and responsible political framework, success will not be achieved. So the role of the scientist, of course, is obviously to feed the mechanisms of governance with good and reliable and predictive knowledge. So that in the case of climate change, we were discussing climate change in the 1980s. It's taken 40 years to get that message through. The message has got through to some governments, but it has been the investment of good science to strengthen the argument for action relating to science, to climate change over these 40 years, to change the thinking within the government structures. So that link is a long link from the research in the laboratory through the management and policy decisions to the action that is ultimately taken through mechanisms of good governance.
Thank you very much.
There was another question. I can't remember I don't see the second question.
There's a comment by Tim Hoffman and Zimbili in the chat. I do not see other questions there. But please just raise your hand if you do have a question, or if you can unmute yourself, that's also fine. I'm keeping an eye on the participants and the chat here. I hope I'm not missing anybody.
Anina, I wonder if I could make a comment. It's Tim Hoffman here.
Yes, please do.
Brian, thanks very much. I wrote a bit of a statement there thanking you for the 10 wonderful years I had at Kirstenbosch, and I really mean it. And thanks also for taking us through this sort of historical journey. I wondered if you could say something about the future. I mean, I don't know how, if you're still sort of keeping up to date and at pace with everything that's going on, but what do you think are the major challenges for the botanical community, you know, in the next 50 years, and how should we as a community be thinking about the future in this way?
Yeah, well, if one goes back to what Clem Sunter and many others long before him said, the future is not what it used to be. The future that you and I grew up with and enjoyed in the 80s and 90s in a scientific institution that had a certain amount of stability and growth in it, within a framework of the rule of law. Today, we see an erosion of governance and the rule of law. So even the best scientists across the globe can't make a really good contribution if the rule of law does not persist. Now, I don't want to project into the future, but we have seen how dramatically things can change within days, within weeks, if certain agendas are forced down onto the community. Getting back to the local scene, though, I think there's still an opportunity for great work in botany and ecology and zoology in South and Southern Africa. I think there are many instances of success. And in fact, over the last couple of years, I've been putting together a series of case studies of remarkable success within Southern Africa. Success, for instance, of the rescue of the giant sable in Angola, the rehabilitation of Gorongosa in Mozambique, the eradication of cats on Marion Island, the success of many community-based or citizen-based science programs, such as the Bird Atlas. All of these, there are probably a dozen good examples of success happening despite a rapidly changing socio-economic climate. So success is possible. It's just a matter of being able to craft an agenda within a changing environment, making use of what I call, as I've indicated in this presentation, of strategic opportunism. Simply having a good strategy, having a good vision, attaching that vision to global trends, local trends, and then picking up on opportunities as they come by, or as in serendipity, being sharp enough to see where an opportunity, an unexpected opportunity might come along. So I wouldn't be totally negative about the future. I think there are many reasons for us to lose courage, lose our enthusiasm about our research programs or conservation programs. But I think individually we can all help to change the bigger picture, regardless of how overwhelming that bigger picture might appear to be negative.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else with any questions? I see there is one comment by Kurt Geldenhuis that you might want to respond to. He says, thanks, Brian. I like your inclusion of adaptive management. We do not have time to deal with all the issues by good research, but adaptive management links science and management in a practical manner.
Yes, I think we are increasingly needing to become more adaptive and framing our management programs within changing environments. I mean, climate change in itself has changed the way in which large protected areas such as Kruger National Park, or industries such as the beef industry or wildlife production or horticulture must adapt to change. And so the need for a constant readiness to take on new ideas, change our ways, exploit opportunities is essential. And I think in some institutions in this country, fairly unique strides have been made in adapting to the subtle changes in the environment. Kruger Park is a good case, where in the last 20, 30 years, a culture and policy of adaptive management has been has enjoyed a huge amount of support, and those changes in policy have been science-based. They haven't been just based on the personal opinion of a director or some leading manager. They've been based on very good science and understanding of the workings of savanna ecosystems and interactions between the habitat and the herbivores and the predators and the whole matrix in which they work, dependent on inflows of water, say from the escarpment and the interior, all the various factors putting together a stable or at least a predictable environment have been sewn together by the researchers in Kruger Park and the managers with them. So I think we've got some excellent models of adaptive management in this country that can be followed not only here, but in other parts of Africa.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much. Here's another question or comment from Alana Rabello that says, but adaptive management requires information. You can't adapt management without data. It shouldn't be done only by opinion. So I like what Brian Huntley is emphasizing here. Thank you so much for that comment. Let me see, here's a question from Megan. What advice can you give to young researchers, conservationists, on how they can ensure their work remains relevant as we transition into the phases of conservation in South Africa, into the next phases?
Well, yes, that's a good question. I think that one needs to unpick all those characteristics which makes a happy career in biology or conservation, or perhaps any area or whatever discipline you're in. And the first is just to have a passion about one's work. Passion is not enough, of course. One's got to have some direction. One's got to have focus. But I think the young conservationists today should recognize that Africa is a big continent. It doesn't just comprise South Africa. There are more conservation biologists, more botanists, more zoologists in, I'd say, Cape Town and the immediate environments than there are in the rest of Southern Africa put together. So that the imbalance between the need across Africa and the capacity and availability of scientists in South Africa is such that one needs to see a whole new wave of Southern African scientists benefiting from the contributions from their colleagues from this part of the world. It amazes me when I look at meetings that are convened today, say by the Bi-Regional Planning Forum, where you have 200 young professionals getting together to discuss concepts which 20 years ago were completely unknown in South Africa. And so I think there's a vast opportunity, diverse fields for young biologists or conservation scientists to engage in. And obviously leadership and direction and resources are needed, but they are there. We only need to track the growth of conservation biology in South Africa over the last 30 years to see the extraordinary, almost unimaginable growth in both the diversity of work that's being done, but also in the quality of works that's being done. So from that aspect, I think I'm still terribly encouraged. Where I am disappointed is the translation and application of that knowledge and energy into action and into the application of policy that has been articulated very beautifully in all our government acts and management plans. We've got no shortage of documentation on what we should do, and all of that based on good science. but it's the implementation that is lacking. And the implementation is lacking because there's a collapse of governance. There is not a discipline in the application of the national vision. It is corroded away all the time by corruption or lack of leadership skills within the government sector.
Thank you very much for those insights. Let me just see if there are any other questions here. I don't see anything particularly in the chat. If there's anybody else with questions, please raise your hand. There are some comments, but I do not see any more questions or new hands. Let me just check here quickly. Yeah, thank you so much. I think that is that's all the questions for now. We appreciate your time and that you put into the talk and in answering all our questions. Thank you so much. It was really great. We're going to wrap up now. I just want to remind people, if you do want SACNAS points for attending here, please just note your name in the chat so that we can note that if you haven't done that yet. But I don't think if there's anything else that I forgot, please just let me know. But I think that's all for now. So again, thank you very much, Prof. Huntley. Thank you everybody for attending. We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. I'm sorry the transmission wasn't always very, very fluid, but I hope that the participants picked up a few things between the gaps in the transmission. But thanks very much for the opportunity, and yeah, until next time.
Thank you so much.